There's constant talk about the freak-offs and the domestic violence in the Diddy trial. But the crazy irony is, the racist law that could put Diddy in prison for life doesn't have a damn thing to do with any of his alleged abuse of Cassie. And even though his convictions only carry a maximum of 10 years each, for a 55-year-old man, 20 years is effectively life. By the way, take a second now and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and then type WTF in the comments as a thank you gift. I'll give you 100% free instant access to my fully uncensored What They Hide VIP Insiders Patreon group for a full month. Now, you've probably heard by now about the Mann Act being used to charge and prosecute Diddy at his trial. But what you haven't heard is the dark history of this law and what it was really created for. Spoiler alert, it wasn't to stop human trafficking. It was created back in 1910 specifically to punish Jack Johnson, the first African-American heavyweight boxing champion in American history, and to stop any other black man from daring to break, well, one of America's biggest taboos, and from rising too high in the eyes of white America. I'll reveal the big taboo in about 60 seconds, but this is the ugly truth behind the Mann Act, also known as the so-called White Slave Traffic Act, and it's being used in 2025 like it's still 1910. See, Diddy was criminally charged and now convicted of transporting sex workers, or women he allegedly made into sex workers, across state lines for prostitution. Sounds horrible until you realize that, again, the law they're using was designed during Jim Crow to criminalize and keep uppity black men in their place. And the real question isn't just, did Diddy arrange transportation for the women who say they were his girlfriends, but the prosecution says he made into prostitutes. The evidence appears fairly clear that he did have them transported. The bigger question is, why is this racist, moralist sex law even still on the books to be used to charge him? Look, like I said in the last episode of this series, Diddy clearly appears to be a serial domestic abuser, but they didn't charge him for that. Are these Mann Act charges actually about justice, or did someone just want to specifically take Diddy down? When you throw in the fact that the women he's accused of quote-unquote trafficking, Cassie and the anonymous Jane, were from their own mouths, in their testimony, his girlfriends, it becomes easy to see this was about more than just law. This was about history being weaponized, and maybe about a secret, hidden hand moving and manipulating behind the scenes to destroy Diddy and his business empire. So let's peel back the layers and let's see what they're hiding. But before we dive all the way in, do me a favor, and if you enjoy getting the raw, behind the scenes, uncensored breakdown on topics nobody else is covering like this, from an insider who knows and ain't scared to reveal it, hit the button and the bell and subscribe to this channel right now. It helps the algorithm push out these videos to other intelligent, open-minded people like you who want to know the truth about the dark psychological mind games being hidden and used to manipulate them. If you do that now, I promise I'm going to provide you more and more fascinating exposés that go even deeper behind the curtain of what the rich, famous, and powerful hide from you so they can use and control you. All right? Appreciate you. That's it. Let's fucking go. Chapter 1. The Dark Origin of the Mann Act. So the Mann Act was passed in 1910 under the guise of fighting white slavery, a term that was used to invoke panic about vulnerable white women being kidnapped and forced into prostitution. But dig a little deeper and you'll find the truth. What it really was a tool of racial control and oppression. Its first major target, Jack Johnson, one of the most famous black men in the world at the time. Johnson was savagely knocking out white men in the boxing ring left and right, making and flaunting big money, and brazenly and openly dating white women. And it was determined by the good Christian white people of America that something had to be done to stop it. So he was made into a criminal. His crime? Having romantic and sexual relationships with white women and not even attempting to hide it. In other words, being an uppity nigga who didn't know his place. For that, the federal government made an example out of him. They couldn't find him guilty of anything else, so they created and passed the Mann Act, a law that made it a felony to transport individuals across state lines for prostitution or other immoral purposes. And that immoral purposes portion was the key, because it gave them tremendous latitude to decide what constituted immoral purposes. And guess what? They included interracial relationships as an immoral purpose. So they used the Mann Act to convict Jack Johnson for taking his white girlfriend across state lines, insisting she was a prostitute. But the woman herself even confirmed she was his girlfriend and fiance, planning to become his wife. It didn't matter. They ignored her. Jack Johnson was convicted and sentenced to prison. He rightfully fled the country to avoid the unfair prison sentence, and his legacy was smeared and destroyed. And the message to other black men, it was crystal clear. To paraphrase The Rock, know your place and shut your damn mouth. Chapter 2. The law is a moral weapon. Let's keep it 100. The Mann Act was never created just to target predators. It targeted the idea of personal sexual freedom, especially among interracial couples. It even made consensual extramarital affairs illegal and punishable by prison if the consenting parties crossed state lines. Think about that. What the hell does crossing state lines have to do with marital infidelity? It makes zero sense. And yet, it was used again and again to criminalize black men, immigrants, political foes, and anyone whose relationships didn't conform to what the government, aka white men, decided was moral. Does that sound like anything happening in 2025? Even though it was reworded in 1978 and 1986 to focus more narrowly on actual trafficking, its moral policing legacy remains baked into the law and the American criminal justice system, and it's still used selectively. That's the problem. The law has always been about control of the accused, not protection of alleged victims. Chapter 3. Why it's back in 2025. So, why bring this law out now against Diddy? Diddy was accused of flying sex workers to different states for parties, photo shoots, and allegedly coercive events. But these people were 100% adults of consenting age, and several of them have testified that they weren't kidnapped, they weren't forced, they were compensated, and went willingly and in many cases happily. Again, Cassie and Jane said themselves on the stand they were his girlfriends. One of them even said she still loves him to this day. So where's the trafficking? I don't see it. What I do see are historical echoes that are some nasty work. 100 years later, and once again, a black man's girlfriends are being labeled sex workers to charge him with trafficking. See, when prosecutors reach for the Mann Act in a case like this, it sends a very specific message. It says, we don't really give a f*** about force or coercion. We just want to prove you moved somebody across state lines in order to get a guilty verdict and put you in prison. We don't care if the people were willing or adult participants. But that's not justice. That sounds more like legal nostalgia for a time when black success could be destroyed by moral panic. Or a vendetta, targeting by an adversary or an enemy. Look, make no mistake, this case was about getting Diddy. Multiple people were given immunity to help make the prosecution's case against him, and only him. Several people, who the prosecution listed as accomplices, not only weren't charged, but the prosecution didn't even call them as witnesses. And that points to some person or entity working behind the scenes. I mean, it has to be noted that after 20 plus years of allegedly abusing and supposedly coercing and trafficking men and women into these freak-offs, racketeering, and all the other stuff that's been alleged, all of this serious criminal trouble for Diddy did seem to start right after he sued Diageo for racial discrimination over his De Leon tequila joint venture deal with them. But if you think I'm making this up, you think this is some conspiracy bullshit, let's look at the timeline and you decide. Diddy sued Diageo in May 2023. Cassie's $30 million lawsuit was filed in November 2023, 5 full years after their relationship was ended by her. It was settled by Diddy the next day, literally, for $20 million, with Cassie agreeing not to discuss any of the things detailed in the lawsuit publicly. That's important. Remember, she agreed not to discuss anything. Surprisingly though, after vowing to fight his lawsuit in court, Diageo then suddenly reversed course and announced they were settling with Diddy less than 2 months later in January 2024. They specifically said that the negative publicity from Cassie's lawsuit made it in their best interest to sever their company's public relationship with Diddy immediately. They settled with Diddy and bought out his De Leon shares, which allegedly cost them $200 million and made Sean Combs $200 million richer overnight. Just 2 months later, in March, Diddy's homes in Miami and LA were simultaneously raided by Homeland Security. In May 2024, 2 months later, the infamous hotel video from 8 years earlier was mysteriously leaked to CNN. Then on September 16th, 2024, after voluntarily agreeing with the feds to return from out of the country where he could have possibly avoided arrest, Diddy was arrested, charged, and held in jail without bail for 8 months until his trial started. Now, do you think all of that was just coincidence? Maybe so. Ask yourself this question though. Who stood to gain from Diddy's sudden prosecution and destruction of his business empire? I mean, I'm just saying. Chapter 4. What this says about power in America 2025. Look, let's be clear. Diddy might not be a hero. He may even be guilty of domestic violence, abuse, manipulation, or worse. There's plenty of evidence that he's done some horrible things to multiple people. I mean, we've all seen the hotel video with our own eyes. There's no doubt he's also done some great things, and he's built some amazing achievements, and he's genuinely helped some people. But it's pretty clear that in a lot of ways, he's a certified piece of shit. I'm in no way, shape, or form rationalizing, justifying, or defending what we saw Diddy do to Cassie in that hotel hallway. Hell, that's indefensible. If you charge him criminally for that, hey, open and shut case. Give the punk ass nigga his time and move on. Next. But he wasn't on trial for that. And as my father used to love to quote, Malcolm X famously said, "When you wrong, you wrong, and when you right, you right. Period. What's fair is fair, whether it makes us feel kind of queasy about it or not. Regardless of how we might feel about Diddy personally, if the US government is using a century-old racist law to bring him down, we have to ask, why this law? Why not prosecute under modern, clear-cut trafficking statutes? Because maybe this isn't just about evidence or justice. Maybe it's about leverage and humiliation. Maybe it's about a personal vendetta from an unseen adversary. Maybe it's about showing that no amount of power or money or achievements makes a black man in America untouchable. Meanwhile, a white man who has 26 allegations from women of sexual abuse, including a 13-year-old girl on video, was recorded saying he just started kissing women without asking, was convicted and fined $84 million for adjudicated rape, openly called Jeffrey Epstein a great guy who'd been his friend for 15 years and liked women on the young side almost as much as him, then was convicted of 34 felonies. And that white man was elected president of the United States 5 months later and given full immunity by the United States Supreme Court. And he's still daily being ruled against by judges in federal courts for violating laws and the Constitution. You tell me why the difference. This is one of the oldest secret truths that they hide in America. History isn't past, my friend. It's policy. So as the late great Biggie once said, if you didn't know, now you know. The ugly truth is, the Mann Act wasn't created to protect victims. It was made to make examples. And in 2025, it's once again being weaponized and used, not for justice, but for symbolism, to send a specific message. This is about more than Diddy. He's clearly flawed and is on video abusing Cassie. But that doesn't change the greater issue. This trial is about the repeating pattern of how America still uses its oldest tools to police, neutralize, and destroy its most dangerous threat: a free black man with money, influence, and power. You agree, or you see it differently? Either way, smash that like button, comment, and hit subscribe if you want more truth that burns through the nonsense and the noise behind the scenes. This is just part 3 of our Cult of Diddy on Trial series, and I got a whole lot more. In the next video, I'm going to be pulling back the curtain on the alleged blackmail, the parties, and the cult-like control inside Diddy's circle that kept people quiet. As always, you know how I get down for you. On this channel, what they hide always comes to light. So until the next video, remember, always look beneath the surface, keep your mind open, and your eyes will follow. Ask why, question everything, stay dangerous.